People leave like the grill propane tank on. They pull up by the front door, leave the grill on, and they're smoking cigs right there. And me and my wife, is that like cocaine? Oh my, we just formed a bomb next to my house. I don't give people in the Chicago unit any outdoor space. And I really stopped giving grills in my Airbnbs in general. But downstairs is literally just a basic unit. You don't get any of my backyard. There's a side walkway. That's it. Like you get a garden level unit. You're never really outside, so you can't really ever bother us or blow up the house from that perspective.
You have a very unique and interesting background. Let's dive into that a bit, right? Tell us about who that is, where that started, and how you got here.
I grew up in the Northeast in a small corner of Massachusetts called Longmeadow in Western Mass, which is like not really considered Massachusetts by the rest of Boston. It's the foothills. And it was super quiet, nice town. I was like big into sports. Pretty decent student, but it came really easy. I was like really fast track runner. My sister was like a national level track athlete, and I was just like a pretty good one. She was like the best around. So I was like a big fish in my small pond, which I think is a theme that carries over to my Airbnbs. And that was fun. I went to a business school called Bentley outside Boston for my undergraduate because I knew I just wanted to do business. I knew I wanted to be an analyst in something. And going to business undergraduate seemed like a better idea than liberal arts or anything like that. So went to Bentley, joined the track team in college for a couple of years, ended up getting kicked off the track team. Basically every school has like a spring day with a concert, right? And the day after that, we had a big track meet at Brown where my sister went at the time, and I was running an 800 meter. And the coach was like, all right, we're running 5 miles of practice. So me, I'm so smart, I'm like, I'm gonna run 5 miles before practice. I'm gonna show up, I'm gonna stretch, I'm gonna be like, coach, I gotta head out now. And he was like, you're gonna run another 5 miles. And I was like, dude, I have to meet tomorrow. You're not burning me out before the meet. So I just ran to my room and I was like, I'm done. I'm not running 5 more miles. And he was like, you're off the team, man. Hang in your jersey. And I was like, come get the jersey, bro. So I just joined the Frisbee team. I have a good buddy from high school that played Frisbee. And I figured I was like one of the fastest dudes around, like faster than everybody. And that pretty good in Frisbee too. So that was the mix between like, I didn't want to join a frat, but I didn't really want to be on a full varsity like team at school. It's like Frisbee teams in between those two. You get a fun sport and you get a half frat team with it. So I did ultimate Frisbee for 4 years and we did really well for a small school. Our team ended up winning like D3 nationals I think after we left, and we almost won it while we were there. So I studied finance and economics and entrepreneurship, and some of my friends started some cool businesses while I was there. And I always wanted to go into entrepreneurship, and I just took a more traditional route getting out. After graduating, I did do like an entrepreneurship program called the Boston Startup School. I was in like a sales track, but I didn't really want to go to be a sales rep. I think I should have ultimately, or I should have actually dove into entrepreneurship fully. But I took a job at a family company that's in Western Mass. It was a paper company called Southworth Paper. They'd been operating for 200 plus years. And Abe Lincoln wrote a letter on his paper that was like on our wall. And it was like, it was in its decline stages, to say the least. The internet and digital resumes and the lack of need for fine paper caused this company to start tanking. And I didn't want to join the company, but I couldn't find a better job coming out of school. Like it's competitive, as you guys know. You get a good job. So I reluctantly joined the failing paper company that did like maybe 15 million revenue, 1.5 million profit, and was like decreasing by 10% per year. And I was like an analyst of their marketing and their financial projections, basically. And I just saw them going down, until they got bought out by a big company. It was like, we'll put you out of business unless you sell. I guess we'll sell then. So the company folded, everyone got fired, they sold the land, and I joined like a small sales brokerage firm before I ended up making my move to Colorado, which was like try to get some Fortune 500 experience, try to get hired by a tech company like Google was like my goal coming out of school. But like I didn't go to Stanford, I didn't study software engineering, so it's like really hard to get into a tech company. So I just reverse engineered how to get to Google by looking at like the job that I wanted based off what I had and like the resume that they would want to get there. And I just built that resume for myself. I got promoted 5 times at Dish, managed a team, managed a bunch of remanufacturing facilities, a couple million parts being redone, a couple thousand headcount. I was managing the forecast for all of those 2 or 3 factories of like what they'll make and when they'll ship. Got bored, went to grad school for analytics because Google wouldn't hire me. I couldn't get through the AI resume algorithm. until I got a master's degree, and then a recruiter messaged me on LinkedIn and hit me up, and they were like, "Do you are interested in the forecasting role at Google?" So I'm like, "Force? Like, what the hell? You guys are a little late."
What's the forecasting role?
Essentially a prediction of the future. Like, this was in the call center world, so you have call centers, they get calls from your advertisers. Every time there's a call, you need to staff an agent to that. Like, you have 20 million calls. Like, how many call center agents do you need? In what languages do you need them? For what countries do you need them? It's like the prediction exercise of matching supply with demand. At Dish, it was like how much equipment is going to come in the door from people disconnecting. They disconnect, they send their shit back. They upgrade, they send their shit back. I try to fix that and send it back out. And at Google, it was like advertisers, how often do they contact us? How many calls are we getting? What different channels are those calls coming in? Phone, email, or a chat? And how is that going to change based off of different factors like advertiser-based growth or like channel strategy? Let's turn the phones off, or let's throttle demand here or there. So it was all about optimizing and prediction. There's a lot of value at big companies in predicting the future and telling them like what will happen so they can plan costs against that. So that's what I did and what led me into short-term rentals, which is short-term rentals are not that hard to predict. It's just a bunch of variables. It's like average daily rate, it's occupancy, it's expenses, which are generally ratios, and it's interest rates and mortgage and financial products, which are very easy to calculate. So I found like the formulaic aspect of it and the tracking forecasts against actuals really like similar to what I've done and relatively simple of a network to predict. But there's a little bit of an art and a science to it all. There is in forecasting. The future is not like one defined path. It's like a series of potential paths based off of what could happen and what the variables are. I finally got that job at Google, and I got an apartment in Boulder. My girlfriend moved in, and the pandemic hit. And all of a sudden, we all are stuck in our apartments. And my apartment was not that big, and we didn't have that much space. And people with tech jobs, it's becomes a lot easier to buy a house. So buying my first house in Colorado not only became feasible, but like not that difficult with my first few stock grants from Google. So coming from the Northeast, I always admired and liked mountain houses, like going to some of the ski resorts up in the mountains of the Northeast. It just seems so cool to have a house in the mountains. I don't know, that just seemed like something that was unreal. Like buying land was something I always just talked about. I'm gonna buy a plot of land. If you're like, what are you gonna do with that land? I'm like, I don't know yet, but I wanted to. But so this allowed me to buy a mountain cabin. First of all, the Boulder bubble is extremely expensive, right? The average 4-bedroom house is $1 million in Boulder. And in Denver, it's like $700,000. So I didn't have enough to buy a house in Boulder, but Boulder's like the edge of the mountains, at the edge of the mountains. So you draw a 30-minute bubble around it, and you have all of these cool mountainous areas that are near a national park, Rocky Mountain National Park, which is like an hour outside Boulder, which is unbelievably amazing and draws a lot of visitors per year. So I just figured out, like, there's this house 30 minutes away from Boulder, still in that bubble of 30 minutes, that was only under $500,000. And I was like, oh my God, like, there's no way that's gonna last. That's gonna be $1 million house in 5 years. Because I've seen homes rise in Colorado at this point, and I was like, I don't know. The pandemic was an inflection point in housing because the last recession, how housing prices dropped by 30%. And this was like anticipated to potentially do that. But I was like, I don't freaking care. I'll just turn it into an Airbnb. Even if it goes down in price, it'll come back up. So I just bought that mountain house of my dreams with 5% down, conventional, 30 minutes from the Boulder office, and spent a year living in it and renovating it while working remotely for Google and giving Google 2-3 hours a day and sanding cabinets and building furniture and doing whatever, building arcade cabinets in my free time like this, like doing anything I had to do to get that house ready for the 1-year mark. Because conventional mortgages have a 1-year requirement on occupancy, and then you can move out and do whatever you want. So if I just got it ready for that 1-year mark, which my wife eventually was like, we have to move, this is crazy. There's moose, mountain lions, bears coming right up to our house. Literally, I have like crazy videos I could show you from my Nest cams. They're just walking right by 10 feet from your house, mountain lion tracks in the morning. This is nuts. We moved to a city. So I was like, absolutely. I was like preparing this for an Airbnb anyway. So let's just move out of this and Airbnb it full time. So like that, me buying a mountain house, and then my wife, my then wife was like, this is not going to work for me. The mountain house is just too crazy. And I was like, I did my research and I was like, it looks like it will work on Airbnb. It looks like I can rent it for $300 a night, 60-70% of the year. That's $80K. My mortgage and my interest rate was like 3% at the time. It was like $1,800, $2,000 a month was my mortgage, and the house was going to make 6 to 8K. It's like, all right, I can fit my expenses and make a good profit off of that. So I just launched it, and I didn't have a second house. We just decided to move in with my mom. Like, I was making a lot of money. My wife had a business. Being a therapist, she was making good money. I was like, screw it. The only way I can be successful is if I sacrifice things. So we moved from Colorado to Massachusetts for the summer of 2021 to launch the Colorado house that was done, but I didn't have the cash for the next house yet. So let's just go move in with family. It's a pandemic anyway. No one can go out and have fun. So let's just do that and then rent it for the summer and see how it goes. Is it going to make what I thought it was going to make? Can I successfully do it remotely? Answer to those things was yes. So we moved back in for a couple of months because it needed more renovations, and then moved out a couple of months later to launch it full time. And then finally was able to get a new apartment, build a new house, and then eventually swing over to Chicago with a house hack. So Chicago's probably not the final step. Like, we want to go move to South America, do Airbnbs down there, do geo arbitrage, like our friend Danny was talking about, and at the meetup, earn dollars in the US and spend pesos or whatever it is, and live a higher quality of life.